Welcome to the Tyler's Place podcast, the official podcast of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction. I am your host, Matt Bowers, 32nd degree. You know, leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. Doesn't matter what organization, your job, anything. Leadership comes from a variety of places. And in our blue or craft lodges, a lot of times our first leader, obviously, is the worshipful master of the lodge. He sits in the east. He wears the top hat, he opens and closes the lodge. However, in Maryland, in craft or blue lodges, we are very focused on showing proficiency in the Catechism of the first 3 degrees, the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and master mason degrees. You have to show proficiency in learning and memorizing the Catechism of those 3 degrees. And the first catechism instructor that I met was Brother Bob Lelonek. He is one of the entered apprentice catechism instructors at my mother lodge in Maryland. Myself, along with the other members of my catechism class, I came from a class of 9. We met twice a week typically with Brother Bob and another brother on another day out of the week to learn the memorization of the catechism and also the meaning behind the catechism of the entered apprentice degree. I actually knew Bob before I became a Mason, so for me, it wasn't terribly difficult. I knew Bob, he's a great guy, but also he's a great leader. He's the type of leader that may not be sitting at the top, but he walks the walk, he talks the talk, and not only is he a great brother, but he's a great man. I could sit here and give you the cliff notes of what we talked about, but I'm going to stop there after 2 minutes of an introduction and let you listen to my chat with entered apprentice catechism instructor Brother Bob Lelonek, also 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason. Brother Bob, I do appreciate you doing this with me today, very much so. Give us a brief personal Masonic history, that is, your journey and how you originally learned the catechism.
Well, when I was, my wife and I got married when we were 19, and I was hot and heavy into work at the time in professional sales, and I belonged to a bunch of groups, engineering groups and professional clubs, and I was active in those. And then 10 years later, we started having a family and, skipped all the old work stuff and got into kid stuff, rec council and, driving the kids to soccer games and whatever else they were into. And I was active and in the administration of a local swim club. And then after the kids were grown, I said, finally, no more meetings. And then I decided I missed those extra circles of fellowship outside of the family. And so I decided to look around and see just what else was out there. And there were a couple of guys throughout my life, men that I admired. They seemed to just have it all going on. And coincidentally or not, at the time, I thought, well, I know that guy's a Mason and that guy's a Mason. I wonder what's to all this. I didn't go to them. I went and knocked on a door at the local lodge. There were some cars on the parking lot, but nobody answered the door. And I did that a couple of times and found out that local business used the parking lot during the day, and in a Masonic lodge, typically there's nobody there during the day.
Sure.
So talked to a couple of friends, and next thing I knew, I was in the secretary's home of Mount secretary's home and filling out some paperwork and writing a check. That's how I started. And that was about 15 years ago when I was, I think, 49 years old at the time. I'm 65 now. So I've been a Mason for about 15 years. When I got in, we had a group of instructors. We had 3 guys. There were 8 men in my group. So we all came in at the same time. We were all initiated together. And we'd all meet in this tiny room in the corner of the lodge. And one day, one of the guys said, hey, when are you going to teach us how to be better men? And that was the motto then and now. And the instructor said, well, it'll come. And
Who was that instructor, not to interrupt you?
No, that's all right. That was Gordon Carroll.
Okay.
No longer with us, and beloved member of the lodge. and wish I knew how many Masons he instructed, but he was is fondly remembered. Anyway, but we didn't have any cipher books or anything like that. It was the old school mouth to ear catechism. Gordon used to say it's like mud. You keep throwing enough of it at the barn, and eventually the barn's covered. And you know, we I don't even remember how long it took to do each degree, but I think I was initiated in November and raised in April the following. So about a half a year for all
Yeah.
three degrees.
Yeah.
And the guys that I came in with, I'll remember the rest of my life. I mean, there's a special bond there, and you go through 3 degrees with them.
For sure. I've certainly experienced that with my large catechism class that you were are to let people know. Bob decided to take what I think is the hardest of the catechisms is the entered apprentice, because you're learning everything from that thing. It certainly gets easier to go along. And you talked about just a second ago that you learned the mouth to ear method, and now we teach through cipher books. Do you favor or find an advantage of learning one way to the other, because you've done both of them?
I have. And what I like about the cipher book is it takes the pressure off. And I think it gives the initiated, the entered apprentice, I think it gives them a little more confidence, a little more hope in one aspect. Another aspect of the book, they look at it after you go through the first couple of questions and answers, and they're like, I got to learn all this. And it can be intimidating. More on that later. But as far as the mouth to ear, it's a challenge. I think it takes a lot longer, and you can't practice on your own. Whereas with the cipher book, my first goal is my obligation to the lodge is to get them to memorize all that stuff. And there's roughly, somebody said 2,000 words, so it's a lot to take on. So that's my first goal. My obligation is to get them to memorize it. But the first step in that is to get them to be able to read the cipher, to decipher it, so they can then practice it on their own at home. Sometimes there's only one guy coming through, one brother in a class, and I've had as many as 18.
Oh, wow.
So it runs the gamut. Do I have a preference? I like the cipher books better, just because it takes the edge off.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just doing mouth to ear, the candidates or the entered apprentices don't seem to know where the end is. Is there more? Is there more? Is there more? Whereas you got a book and you know when you're getting to the end.
Right.
And that makes it a little bit easier. And they can practice with each other as well.
Sure. That was not having known any better. It was nice to be handed a book until I opened it, and then I'm like, what's this? Which it is certainly it's another language, because it's for, this isn't anything earth shattering or unknown to anyone. It's not written word. It's a cipher. It's a code. And it helped. Once, the daunting thing about that is that once you've learned that, later on through the other 2 degrees, through Fellowcraft and Master Mason, that understanding of the cipher makes those 2 easier. They have their own difficulties between the long paragraphs about the pillars or the battle, or the very long obligation of Master Mason. They have their own things about them, but at least you understand and you can read the cipher.
And you had mentioned about, being the entered apprentice being the most difficult. I'm not sure it is. I picked it just because I favored it. I understood it more than I understood the second and third degree. Third degree I understood, but the second degree, there's still many aspects of that I don't understand. What's the meaning behind this? This
Right.
line or that line. What's the purpose of this question and answer? But with the entered apprentice degree, I tell the guys toward the end, I'll say, fortunately, this is the toughest degree, because there's words you've never heard before. There's a cadence. There's the concept. The whole thing is new. You've taken time away from your family. Some guys have young ones at home. They have careers, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm spending all this time here for this what seems like silliness at the time. And I tell them when we get close to the end or after they're finished, I said that was the toughest degree. The second degree is the longest, the most wordy, but it also has the most repetition. Some of the questions and answers are exactly the same. Some
Right.
change just a little bit. So that's not so bad. And then I tell them the third degree is the easiest. It's the shortest. The obligation is the longest, but once you get to that point, it'll go pretty quickly.
You mentioned you've had a class as large as 18. How many brothers over the years have you instructed?
I counted. I keep a book for a couple of reasons, but I've to date 222.
222. Wow.
And that's at Mount Ararat, my mother lodge, and then I have instructed a couple of guys in other lodges that I'm also a member of. One guy asked me after I did the entered apprentice degree. I've never instructed any of the other degrees, and he asked me if I would be his instructor for the second degree. Now, I couldn't have done it unless I had the cipher book.
For sure.
Because there's no way I had the other degrees committed to memory. You memorize them at the time, but thankfully you don't have to remember them for the rest of your life.
Right.
You're never quizzed on it again.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Masons we'd have if such was the case. So with the cipher book, I was able to instruct him in his second and third degrees and examine him in the lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, they can't use the cipher book in the lodge during their examination, but the instructor can.
Right.
So
Okay.
I was able to, I had my own visual cues that he did not. So another reason for having the cipher book. And the other thing is some of the other lodges, we're blessed at my mother lodge at Mount Ararat because we have a number of instructors, 2 for each degree. Other lodges may have 1 instructor who covers all the degrees, and typically they might only get 1 or 2 new members a year, whereas Mount Ararat, we've had a significant number. Since I became a Mason, I was raised in 2008, and I taught my first class in 2008. And I think I only missed 2 groups of brothers. So our lodge has had, over 230 members in that period in the last 15 years. That's a healthy lodge.
Yeah, it was especially nice to think about the small fellowcraft proficiency that we saw the other night. On a Monday night, not a normal lodge night, and to see a decent amount of people come out for that.
Yeah, I think we had probably 15 men in the lodge outside of the line officers, and
Yeah.
every chair was full.
Yeah.
So we definitely have a healthy lodge, and I think that comes from the leadership and the enthusiasm that the line officers have, and they look for ways to make it fun. And I've got the utmost respect for them. I figure I got an easy job. I just go into the back room with the new guys and push play.
Well,
I got this memorized.
Well, and to think about that's kind of going to lead into my next question, but to think about the 2 men that came through the other night, I was especially impressed by that because they needed very little prompting. When they got a little flustered with something or weren't sure, I was especially impressed by how quick they may have heard just a word and they picked it right up.
Yeah.
I came from, you remember I came from a class of 9, so we were really lucky in a lot of ways. But when you have 2 or just 1, you've got to know it.
And that's true. And those 2 guys fed off of each other. I mean, they encouraged each other, and I think they're probably. I wouldn't be surprised if they're already best friends, and they didn't know each other before coming through because they have that bond. Not that they went into battle together, but they faced an altar together. They put their hand on the same book at the same time. And, I get choked up just thinking about it and, what that means inside. And one of the things that I hope in my classes is to instill that in other Masons, in our newest Masons, because I know the warmth that this provides me. Mm-hmm. And I've told other guys, I said, Masonry to me is a warm blanket. And I could be standing in the middle of nowhere, not a person in sight, but I never feel alone, ever, because I know that somebody's with me.
Sure.
They're with me. They're not far away. And it's not the fact that I can pick up the phone and call somebody and ask for help and I know I'll have help. I'm kind of not that guy to ask for help, but just knowing that these guys are there and I show up in lodge and, everybody's hugging and uh, a funny story. Not long ago, I had bit of a sore throat and I told my wife, I said, I don't know if I should go to the lodge tonight. And she said, well, just don't kiss anybody. And I said, it's just guys are there. I said, you know how we get. No, it's just a crazy warm thing.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. If I can't make a meeting for whatever reason, I feel like I missed out on something. Even if I read the trestle board online of what's coming up, I typically do feel like I missed out on something. And a lot of times I'll ask one of the other brothers from my class, Senate Foudy, for instance, oh, how was the other night? Oh man, you missed. And I was like, oh, I knew it. A conversation, something just as silly as that, I feel like I missed out on. You're
just a nod or a handshake or a hug. I mean, it's we have a I guess you call it an affectionate lodge. I mean, a close lodge
Mhm.
where everybody seems to make sure that they say hello to everybody and
Yeah.
at least exchange a handshake and a kind word. And it's just people say hey, how you doing? I said I'm doing okay now that I'm here.
Yeah.
And I know that they say that Masonry is not a religion and it's not a substitute for religion. But for me, even after 12 years of Catholic school, for me, that lodge is my church. That's where I go to bring me back to center where I need to be
Mhm.
after being tugged in all kinds of directions throughout the day or throughout the week. I know I go there and I say, okay, I know I need to chip this edge off of my block, my ashlar, or I need to do this a little better, and I probably shouldn't have done that. And it's just a nice way. I reground myself when I'm in that room, and
Sure.
hard to explain, but that's the way it is for me.
No, I think anybody listening to this would be certainly able to understand that. And you talked about leadership a minute ago. Our Mother Lodge, Mount Ararat, does have very strong leadership, and having not been a part of it for very long, and knowing some of the people that I did, or meeting some of the people that I did before joining, makes me wish I had been a part of it sooner. You talked a little bit about the making how the line there, looks to have a lot of fun with their practices and stuff like that. Why did you pick being a catechism instructor? Why not the line? That's
Well, I thought about the joining the line. I had a connection, an instant connection with my catechism instructor, and he taught me my first and second degrees and part of the third. He co-instructor with another instructor for the third, but I had a connection with him,
Mhm.
and they were looking for someone at the time to help with the catechism, and I saw if I joined the line, then that's a 7 year commitment, pretty much. You go in as a steward, junior, then senior. The steps,
Mhm.
and you have to learn each position. And it seems like even in hindsight, or especially in hindsight, the line officers spend most of their time. There's a significant amount of pressure to get their job right. They have to learn a whole lot of stuff. They have to learn not just floor work, where to sit, how to hold their staff or sword or whatever,
Right.
but they have a lot of words and ritual that they have to learn. So they're busy while they're sitting in one chair or one position within the lodge, holding one office. They're learning the next one. They don't have time to spend with the guys coming in, the candidates about to join, or those just initiated, entered apprentices. And the bond that I had, the fun that I had, the fulfillment I got through fellowship during my entered apprentice catechism and subsequent degrees, I wanted to be part of that. And when the one brother in our class asked old Gordon, say, when are you going to teach us to be better men? And he said, it'll come. it took me a while to figure out what he meant. For some, the concept of Freemasonry after you join washes over you gently. And at some point in time, you'll say, oh, okay, I get it. I see what it's all about. Others, they might have a eureka moment right away and, okay, I know what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just practice and polish and chip off those rough edges. I wanted it for others. I wanted them to get it sooner. I wanted them to understand what Freemasonry was about. So I didn't, as I said earlier, my first obligation was to the lodge and get everybody to memorize all this. Sometimes I call it silliness, all this stuff. But my primary goal that satisfies me, is to get them to understand a possible meaning behind each one of those exchanges. And that's what I do. So I don't just start off with, whence came you? I say the question, give the answer that they'll have to memorize, and then I give them one possible reason for or behind that exchange. What does it mean? Why is it important to us?
Right.
And it gives them something to think about. And every time I go to lodge, actually, my old instructor, Gordon, would say, I don't know why we have to do that. We've heard that 100 times. Every time you come in the lodge, they say the first 5 to 10 minutes, it's all exactly the same. Why do we have to do that? But every time I hear each of the officers say, here's their role, here's their responsibility, not in those words, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It reminds me of things. So the more I hear it, I'm going to get something out of it every once in a while. I'm going to get a nuance that I hadn't thought of before.
Right.
Same thing with catechism. The reason I like hearing the guys stand for proficiency is when I hear them say it, or when we're doing degree work, when I hear them say it, it reminds me of things or makes me think of things. And depending on, the orator, sometimes the guys are a little easier to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys project a little better. Some guys just have a way with the words, even though it's the exact same thing that's been said thousands of times by others.
Right.
They have a way about it, their cadence or whatever, that just makes me perk up, and I'll get something new out of it. It'll
Right.
make me think, or maybe it'll help me solve a problem that I'm going through. It's like, wow, I didn't think of that. So that's my primary goal, is to get guys to understand what they join and what it could mean to them, and hopefully it'll mean to them what it means to me. It'll give them that warm blanket,
Right.
and that comfort when they need it, and even when they don't, just knowing that it's there.
Right. Yeah. You talk about hearing people, the way they emote. I know within being in a group of 9 people, when you're learning it, it's especially difficult because some people don't have a sense of cadence and they'll just start plowing their way through it. Or you have that one guy that's a little bit behind. And so you've got that echo effect that if you're in a line of brothers trying to hear what's going on, it will drive you batty. And thankfully, we had 2 brothers that were our bookends that knew it well and said it loud. And I was like, okay, I can hear them, and I'm not going to want to strangle the guy next to me.
And I've had that where someone was a syllable behind, and if we're sitting in the catechism room or wherever we were doing it, I'd have them on one side of me. I'd have to turn the hearing aid off on that side because it would even throw me off as the instructor. But I had that advantage. I was able to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's definitely been a pleasure teaching these guys, and they thank me and they thank me and they thank me. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm getting just as much out of this as you are, because I get to meet you, I get to know you, and I'm learning something from you. And it's what we do. It makes us all stronger. And as we use the tools of the builder's trade to teach lessons, we take the compasses, or those with dividers, whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
and we measure the space between 2 blocks. They didn't use a tape measure long ago. They took dividers and they said, spread them out and said, okay, here's how long this space is. And then they go up to the stone that was supposed to fit there, and they'd scribe it and chisel away until it fit. And that's what we do. That's what we're teaching these guys to do, is to chip off those edges so they will fit. You look at that, there's a group of guys standing over there, whether it's Masonic Lodge or not. And it's like, okay, I want to talk to them. I want to meet them. I want to, for whatever reason, whether it's work related or just a social circle.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, this guy's that, this guy's got this, whether it's motorcycle gear or he's got 3 dogs on a leash next to him or whatever. I got to figure out what do I need to give up of my own personality that I'm going to fit in and make the group stronger? Not
Yeah.
just I'm going to push my way through, and I don't like this and I don't like that about you. So just get over it. This is me. And that's what we teach, to chip off those edges and learn how to be better men. And that means, better husbands, better fathers, better sons, and better brothers. We talk about brotherhood, and the term brother is an official title within our lodge. We're supposed to call each other brother. And I know what brother means, and I get all that, and I use the term brother as often as anybody, I guess, almost. But what means just as much, or maybe even more to me, are the friendships that I've gained since I became a Mason. I had friends back before I was a Mason, but I wasn't sure I really knew what a friend was, how I could identify the better ones, or how I could be a better friend. Now I've certainly learned that, how to be a better friend, how to be a better brother within the lodge. So I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn, not just from the officers, not just from being in that hallowed space, but meeting these guys wherever we are, doing the catechism.
So what's your favorite part or most important part about teaching the catechism? Is it the memorization? Is it the message? A favorite passage from anything? I think I might know what the favorite passage might be, because I've heard Dave Martak go on about that in a good way more than often.
Yes, it's true. I do have, that would be my favorite passage, just because what others have said it's meant to them. But, and I'll get into that, but I don't think the memorization part is my favorite. I mean, I use it in other things too. If I'm lying awake at night and I can't sleep, the first thing I do is I push play in my head and I start running through the questions and answers, and it's rare that I get to the end before I'm back to sleep. So yes, it does.
I should give that a shot
to put me to
sometimes.
sleep.
I should really give that a shot.
And of course, I've been doing it for 15 years, and I'm sure I've said it a thousand times or more.
Right.
And so it comes somewhat easily. There are times where there's a lull in catechism, because they're doing other degrees or whatever. So I need to stay sharp on it. I get notes from time to time from guys, some guys, when they first start, typically happens with older guys, old like me, and they'll say, there's no way I'm going to learn this. And then I got to drop out. And we find a way. I said, look, I'll find a way to get you through this. Don't feel it. Yes, it's a challenge. And the younger guys seem to get it better than the old guys. And that's why I'm not an officer, because I'm an old guy and I'm never going to learn that other stuff. I've met with guys in dorm rooms because they said they didn't have time to continue this.
Mm-hmm.
I've met with guys, I've driven to their workplace and met them outside in the parking lot at lunch and done this in the car. We'll do what we can to get you through. We had a guy that was going to drop out. He just said, there's no way I'm going to learn this. And then I'm going to read a note that he sent me. I keep it close to me, so I just pulled it over. I'm going to read what he wrote to me after telling me he was so glad that he didn't drop out, because it's been the richest experience of his life.
Mm-hmm.
It says, Bob, I just want to let you know how much I appreciate what you're doing to help us all make it through to the next degree level, especially me. Since I've met you, through your training, explanations, and patience, I'm understanding what being a Mason is really about. I've already noticed a change in my temperament, understanding, and feelings towards other people, and I like it a lot. Should I not be able to become a Master Mason, would be one of the biggest disappointments of my life. Thanks for all you do and the example you set. So you wonder why I keep doing this. It's guys that, not how they feel about me when it's done. This is a guy going out of his way to tell me how he feels about himself, how he feels better about himself because he sees that he's a better person. And we're usually the last ones to see that we're being a jerk. We're also the last ones to notice that we're being a good person. Sure, we feel good about things and that we do, or say, this is a good deed, I'm going to go do it. But here's a guy who was just overjoyed the fact that he's a better person. And that's why I keep doing it, because I have an opportunity to help guys. And it's not, I think my friend Maynard said something recently that we shouldn't ask guys to join because we need guys in the lodge, what it's going to do for the lodge, but the focus should be on what it's going to do for them if they join, how it's going to improve their lives, how it's going to enrich their lives. And again, not, okay, I'm going to have 20 guys I can call on if I need to, if my basement floods or I need to move furniture.
Right.
It's the other thing. It's just, guys that you can lean on. I got something I got to talk about, or just knowing they're there and setting an example. We put our hand on the Bible and promise some things. We back up. When we're growing up, our parents say, you got to be a good person or you're going to besmirch the family name. You don't want to give the family a bad name. Don't
Right.
give the family a bad name. The family, the family, the family. Well, when you put your hand on that book, you got an emblem on the back of your car, you're wearing a ring or a hat or a shirt or something like that, and you do something untoward somebody else, then it's a reflection on the fraternity. It's a reflection on all the brothers. Oh, that's why you're acting that way. You're one of them too. Well, have them say that because it's a good thing, not because they saw you disrespect someone and think that all Masons do that. No, we don't. We all screw up, but we got brothers to help prop us up, literally and figuratively. And, that's the warm blanket that I enjoy.
Bob's insight on how he instructs, leads a class, really shows the level of commitment that he has to Masonry and what it's done for him. It shows that leadership does come in very many shapes and sizes and from different areas that you may not think of when you are first becoming a Freemason. I certainly had no idea of it until I was handed a cipher book and was in my first catechism class, and away we went from there. So I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Bob. Again, he's a true leader in every sense, a great man in every word, and he's just a pleasure to be around each and every time I have the chance. So, until next time, thank you for listening to The Tyler's Place. I am your host, Matt Bowers, 32nd Degree. Be sure to check out all of our social media as well as our YouTube page, where you can actually become a paid member or paid subscriber to the page for as low as $2 a month and have access to some really cool footage that we've gotten from the archives here at the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C. It's well worth checking out for a minimum of $2. The Tyler's Place podcast is the official and brought to you by the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction. Until next time, take care.